Hello and welcome back to the Vault Podcast. Unfortunately, we don't have Nick here today, so I will be one man showing it. That's okay, because I could talk for hours and hours and hours. So let's get it right into it. Joe Rogan signed a new Spotify deal. It's worth $250 million. As far as I know, I've done a little research from just the internet and whatnot. It's no longer exclusive, but Spotify is going to get a portion of the ad revenue. So that'll be kind of cool. It'll be interesting to see because, yeah, they're paying Joe Rogan $250 million. Do you think he makes more than that in ad revenue? And then next time this contract signing comes around again, is Joe Rogan just going to leave because it's kind of more of a net loss than anything? I know he likes working with Spotify because Spotify lets him do whatever he wants, but now that he's on YouTube, he's already back to the same constraints he always has been. Um, Additionally, I did some reading and they talked about how with Spotify releasing its exclusivity that might allow Apple Podcasts to get back into first place, because when Spotify started signing all these exclusivity deals, it took the viewers from Apple Podcasts and exclusively put them on Spotify. And so Apple was kind of just shit out of luck in that situation. On other Joe Rogan news, he had Cat Williams on the podcast. That was pretty cool considering that Cat Williams kind of threw Joe Rogan and a bunch of other comedians under the bus on the Club Shay Shay podcast. As everybody already knows, that was kind of a big deal. Cat Williams is maybe one too many screws loose at this point. Um, he is a smart guy. He has great revelations. Obviously, like he said in the podcast, he's very well read with like 3,000 books or whatever, 20 a week or 20 every 2 days, I think is what he said. But he makes kind of weird and outlandish claims, and kind of what I saw from that whole ordeal is he's not stupid, but he'll make something that is maybe close to reality or even in the pseudoscience sector of things, but he'll then back it up with like obvious things like, oh, well, the pyramids were made by aliens. Really? Well, is the sky blue? And they're like, yeah, well, the sky's blue. Oh, so it should be obvious. I'm like, sure. Yeah, no, that doesn't make sense at all. But we all love Cat Williams, so we let him get away with his crazy antics. And every once in a while, he does have a good point. He does have a good insight. He's just not very cohesive, but I guess who is these days? I just finished the Tim Kennedy book. That was pretty cool. I really, really, really like Tim Kennedy. I liked him before, and I'd seen him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I've heard of him in the UFC and stuff. But sitting down, just listening to his life is absolutely insane. He was a firefighter. He was an EMT. He was kind of police officer for a little bit. He was special forces, Army Rangers. Trained in sniping. He obviously he was a huge UFC contender. That was a giant deal. Hearing about his life, hearing about the things he was going through, hearing about his war stories. Holy cow! Talk about a freaking super soldier. He at one point stepped out of the vehicle as it was getting blown up. Well, I think at the time it was a bazooka. I don't know if they had RPGs in Afghanistan yet, but like an action star, stepping out of the vehicle as it's blowing up. Sorry, there was some knocking and sounds in the door. Absolutely insane. And going on to jiu-jitsu and being a television star and working with special forces and operators and veterans and making movies and making friends with other super badass, awesome dudes. At one point in time, he was making a movie with the dudes from Black Rifle Coffee, which I think is really, really cool because Evan Evan Hafer, I think is his name, is from Lewiston, and that's where I went to college. So super cool, hearing about his legends and hearing about the different types of stuff. I mean, a buddy that I worked with actually filmed a commercial using a Black Rifle Coffee boat from Evan Hafer, so that was super super cool. And so just to see how kind of small and interconnected the world is, and then Tim Kennedy being a part of that movie, and I mean, he hasn't stopped yet. I mean, not only has he created and participated in all kinds of different brands and branding and fundraisings and all kinds of stuff like that. Last time he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, he talked about a private school that he's doing where he teaches kids how to shoot and how to do archery and how to start fires, and they do jujitsu, and they make their parents read the same books the kids are reading. Just all around super super guy, super super cool guy, and I could not say enough good things about him. Probably one of my favorite books that I've ever read, um, and definitely hands down my favorite autobiography type book that I've ever read. And just from the war stories in that book, probably one of my favorite war books I've ever read. But it's a close say. It's close because I really like Lone Survivor, and I really really like Ghost Soldiers. So maybe contentious first. An absolutely insane but great man. In other news, we have men's wellness in Brazil. That's interesting and exciting a little bit. It's confusingly exciting because I saw some clips from it, and I like bodybuilding and I work out quite a bit. And it's really, it's weird to see because it's men in bikinis, and the bottom half, you're like, oh wow, that's really solid. And then it pans around to the first half, and you're like, oh, that really takes me off guard. Seeing the bottom half more or less look like a woman, and seeing the top half, well, look like kind of like a skinny, like almost Calvin Klein model esque top on the back, but then like long, glorious hair and like very smooth features. It's confusing because you're like, I want to be into it, but then I'm like, this is something I've never seen before. So I almost don't even know how to feel about it yet. But exciting and fun and interesting to see where it's going to go and where that's going to lead. But hey, maybe it'll be a new mark in a trans division, or maybe it won't. I don't know. I did have a friend ask me about finances, and I thought it would be a great thing to talk about those finances on the podcast. So I wanted to talk about my two main finance philosophies that I like to adhere to. One is the Dave Ramsey type of philosophy, and the other is the Rich Dad Poor Dad type of philosophy. And the Dave Ramsey type of philosophy, more or less, is get out of debt, save your money, spend less than you may, or save more than you spend. Very simple, very rudimentary way of doing finances. Do you want more money? Well, spend less money and save more money. Oh, okay. Use what you got. Whereas the Rich Dad Poor Dad method is more leveraging what you could have. It's a very real estate type of investment, which makes sense because the author of that book is a real estate investor, made a lot of his money in Oregon. But a lot of that has to do with, hey, you can acquire debt, and that debt will work for you, like a house loan. And you get a loan on a house, you pay for some of the loan for a little bit, the house appreciates because housing markets usually do. And then you can use that money. You can either sell that house, bank the cash, put it in a new house, a new investment, or whatever it is. A relatively new concept that has arose, at least on the internet. Hey, you can refinance that house and then take out additional debt that's now free cash flow, and put that right into a new house, and then that money's not taxed. And then you can keep on acquiring assets over and over and over, which I think is awesome. It's a lot more technical financing, you kind of got to know what you're doing. You got to know who to talk to. You got to be in the sphere a little bit. You have to, take a little risk and learn from it. So it does definitely take time. And maybe somewhere at the end of a good Dave Ramsey type philosophy then can transfer over into a rich dad, poor dad type of philosophy. But on one hand, Dave Ramsey's more, the poor middle class, like, hey, how do you get financially free in the situation you're in? And then the other one is more the entrepreneurial side. How do you delve into this world of finances and succeed? Or at least it's an introduction book to that. Obviously, it can get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. My personal, my personal I would say advice when it comes to financing or at least starting out. I'm a big proponent of the stock market. I really like the stock market. On one hand, with the whole Dave Ramsey philosophy, the stock market is a great place to just set your assets and let them grow slowly. Take that cash that you would have, you know, saved away in that savings account, until you get 10,000 or whatever, and put it in a safe stock or safe whatever it is. The nice thing about that is stocks aren't taxable, so they're accruing money and you're not getting taxed on it because it doesn't technically exist in your pocket. It's a relative gamble, but it doesn't have to be. So investing in safe stocks, 401k, Coke, Pepsi, Nike, whatever it is, a Fortune 500 company, some kind of other ETF that has slow but consistent growth throughout the years, always great places to put your money. On the other hand, you have something more of a rich dad, poor dad philosophy where you can acquire large stakes of company, then you can go and get loans that are based on those stakes in that company. And that money is non taxable because how do you tax debt? So as long as you're getting a loan and then specifically putting that money into an asset, now you have an asset from money that doesn't technically exist, which is debt. That is based off of or backed by the fact that you have large stock in some company. So that would be a more rich dad, poor dad type of investing. If you're just barely starting out in the stock market, I would 100% advise two methods. Put your money in a super safe stock so you don't really have to worry about it as you're learning. Or if you really, really want to learn, either download one of those apps that gives you like fake money and fake stocks and you just watch for a little bit, just to kind of get a feeling of how it works, or to start out with something really, really small. $10 for maybe somebody who's in high school or college, and $100 or so from somebody who has a little bit more money to play around with. Research a stock, maybe it goes up, maybe it goes down. For instance, DoorDash right now. DoorDash is going insane. In the last 2 months, I think it's gone up like $50. It's crazy. DoorDash is a great one to watch right now. You get it, maybe it's gonna dip like $3, bam. Put in that $100. Just wait. Just wait. Week or so. Get a $5 gain. You can do it again. Or you can invest in something else. You could invest in dividend stocks. I absolutely love, love, love monthly dividend stocks, ones that pay you monthly. It's just really fun to see a stock pay out more than a quarter of a year or twice a year, or sometimes even once a year. It's fun to see that money come in and how to use it and what to leverage. It makes you feel like you're having progress. So I really, really like that. On top of, I personally would really like to be able to get $1,000 or more a month from just my dividend yields. That would be awesome. It would help towards financial freedom. It's a great backup. And when you have that type of cash flow coming from that type of investment, it's really easy to reinvest and it just keeps on compounding over and over and over and over. It's a great place to go. So if you want to look into monthly dividend yield stocks, feel free. I love them. DoorDash, awesome, great stock right now. I'm personally invested in a stock called Danomere Scientific. It isn't doing so good. All in all, I'm on a net negative with my stock investing, but I mean, you never know. I love it. I think it's fun. It's only something that's ever going to help you throughout your life, and it's kind of like a little bit of a game. So that's really fun for me, being able to have that kind of cash flow, that kind of investing, learning. Um, Big deal. I don't really have too much else to say on the podcast today. It's probably going to be pretty short. I'm hoping next week we'll see Nick again, try to have something a little bit longer. This is mostly just content to get out there, to stay consistent, to make sure that this podcast ends up working in the long term. That being said, in the past week or so, I went ahead and wrote down a little quote from Mike Tyson that I'll leave you guys with. And it goes something like this: greatness is when you turn your delusions into reality. Have a good one. Ba-dum, bum, bum, bum,